final segment of the show for today. The topic is slavery and the civil rights movement, and of course we're talking to Alana McLaughlin, who has given us some information in reference to the beginning of slavery and some of the things that were generally associated with that institution, as well as the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendments to the Constitution that ended slavery, gave African citizenship rights and the right to vote. But she's now talking about some of the problems, some of the people who opposed African suffrage, freedom, and etc. And I think it was led primarily by an organization called the NAACP. Let's talk about the NAACP and some of the things that were associated with that organization trying to deal with civil rights of Africans.
Well, one of the reasons why the NAACP really popped up was the Emmett Till case. Emmett Till reportedly flirted with a white woman in her store, and she went home and told her husband. So the husband got his stepbrother, and they went and kidnapped Emmett Till, which is one reason they went to jail. Then they kidnapped him, they gouged out his eyes, they gun whipped him, beat him, hung him. Then they tied a lamp around his neck. Then they threw him into the Mississippi River. And how could somebody do that to a little boy? He was 14, so he had his whole life to live, but he got it taken away by racism.
But now this also indicated that the NAACP was concerned about that. And what was the NAACP's reaction to what had happened to Emmett Till?
Well, the NAACP had many protests, said that the governor of Mississippi should have gotten more justice for Emmett Till, because they immediately didn't go to jail just because of the case. So the NAACP, they started saying that they support Miss Till, Emmett's mother and father, because how hard can it, I imagine it's very hard seeing your child in an open casket with basically no eyes, no face, bruised lips, gun whipped. And at Till's funeral, his mother kept his casket open no matter how gruesome it looked. She kept the casket open. And you know why? To show the world how evil those men were and how evil the Ku Klux Klan and what people back then could be. To show how evil that was.
Now, all of this evil and all of the violence really came at another stage in the 1960s with the civil rights movement led primarily by Dr. Martin Luther King. How did Dr. Martin Luther King lead this movement? Movement towards civil rights.
Well, Martin Luther King was born on January the 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, which is where his father was a preacher. So he grew up with the thought that he wanted to stop all this segregation, and he has a famous speech, which is the I Have a Dream speech. And in that speech he's saying, I have a dream that one day Caucasian people and Muslim and African and Indian will all come together and say I love you to one another, because that's the kind of world that the Lord wanted us to have. Because he didn't want all this violence. He didn't want all the Emmett Till murders and the Birmingham bombs. He didn't want all that. He didn't want all those terrorists. He wanted somebody to love. He wanted everybody to love each other.
But one of the things about this is